And we are live.
Brilliant. So we're now on live stream, and to welcome those who are viewing from afar. Thanks for the opportunity to engage. And before we proceed any further, I'd really like to call on Commissioner Bigham to open with karakia. It's appropriate. Commissioner Bigham is from your patch in a certain sense, so it's really appropriate that we ask you to open with the Commission's karakia. Commissioner Bigham.
O tēnā koe, te tia mana, tēnā hoki koutou o Whanganui awa. Nei rā te mihi atu ki o koutou. Ka whakaaro hoki, ka mihi ake hoki ki ngā iwi o tērā rohi, ki ngā rauru kitai, ngā waiariki, Ngāti Apa, Ngāti Haua, Ngāti Rangi, me te āti haunui a pāpārangi nō reira tēnā koutou. Ka mihi hoki kia koe Deputy Mayor Craig, David, me o koutou kaunihira, me o koutou kaimahi. So just a huge mihi to you all today, tangata whenua, and those of you there at Council, for the leadership, for allowing us to join you, albeit remotely today, from around the Motu and around the Pacific. So we'll just lead off with our karakia, and you may or may not know it, so please feel free to join in if that be the case. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, kia hi a ki ana te ata, kura he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Kia ora tātou. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benita.
Kia ora, Benita. So just in terms of introductions, we'll introduce the Commission first. And then once we've done that, we'll pass over to the introductions from your team, Deputy Mayor Helen. Is that you on the end there, Helen?
Yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Rightio. Good. Thank you. So I'll just introduce myself to start off with. I'm Brendan Duffy, Chair of the Commission. I had this role for about, on the Commission for 8 years, been the Chair for about the last 6. In a former life, I was the Mayor of the Whanganui District Council for 12 years, did 21 years of service on that council, spent some time on National Council and a variety of other roles, and continue to enjoy this involvement as well. I'll ask Commissioner Bigham to introduce herself again formally, and then we'll go to Commissioner Bull.
Tēnā no tātou. Ko Bonita Bigham aho. So I'm Bonita Bigham. I hail from Manaia in South Taranaki, so your neighbouring council. And I whakapapa to Ngā Ruahine iwi and Te Atiawa iwi in North Taranaki. I have served in the South Taranaki district as a councillor for 3 years, and also a community board member for, three terms, community board member for 1 term, and I'm the current Māori ward councillor for Taranaki Regional Council. Also heavily involved with LGNZ as co-chair of Te Maruata, the National Collective of Māori and Local Government, amongst other roles. So grateful to have the opportunity. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Commissioner Bull.
Thank you. My name is Gwen Bull, and I live in Auckland. Don't hold that against me. I was on the Auckland Regional Council for 9 years, 6 years of that as Chair of Policy and Planning, and the 3rd term as Chair of the Council. I left there and was elected or nominated to the Local Government Commission, where I served for 6 years. I was awarded the Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit for my services to local government. It's been a passion of mine and still is, and I'm excited to be part of this regime again. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. And we'll move on to the local government team. And EJ, you might kick off, please.
Kia ora, thank you, Brendan. Tēnā tātou katoa, ko EJ Ruthven tōku ingoa. I'm EJ Ruthven. I'm a senior advisor with the Local Government Commission, and I've been the lead advisor for the Whanganui District Council's representation review. It's been great to work with Anna and Sasha along the way, and I'm really looking forward to this afternoon's proceedings. Thank you.
Cheers, EJ. Linda?
Tēnā koutou o te rā tēnā tātou katoa, ko Linda Canton Tokuingoa. I'm Linda Canton. I'm also a senior advisor with the Local Government Commission, and I'm here today just as a bit of backup. Should EJ drop out for any reason, I'll be here.
Cheers. Emma?
Hey everyone, my name is Emma. I'm a project administrator at the Local Government Commission. I'll be running the live stream in the Zoom today, so if you have any technical difficulties, please let me know and I will try my best to help. Thank you.
Fantastic. So that's the introductions from our side. I'll make a couple of observations and then we'll go to introductions from your team and then straight into your presentation. Clearly, we're on live stream. And that often adds another dimension, good or bad, depending on how well the day goes. I just want to make the observation, if you see commissioners not on screen observing what's occurring, it's only because we're writing notes. Some people get a bit grumpy that we don't seem to be showing interest, but I can assure you that we are. So as a courtesy, I just want to make that observation to you. As we go through the proceedings, we may wish to ask some questions. They don't necessarily have to be answered immediately. They can be picked up and noted, and then we can have them come through in the right of reply. That's important because officials may need to go away and get some information or whatever. So just as a note, as we wander through, should we need to get another point of clarity from you as council, there'll be capacity to do that. So with those modest introductions, I'll just pass back over for your introductions and then straight into the proceedings. So Deputy Mayor Helen, I'm just trying to find you on the screen. I've got you.
Yeah, I'm right at the end here. Kia ora everyone, Helen Craig, Deputy Mayor. I've been on council for 11 years, which has been an incredibly wonderful experience. I will start on the left here with Anna and we'll just quickly whip around the room.
Hello, Anna Parliamenting Democracy Services Manager.
Kia ora, my name is Sasha Matthews and I'm the Governance Services Officer.
Kia ora tātou, Josh Chandler Mackay. I'm a third-term District Councillor.
Tēnā koutou katoa, I'm Jenny Duncan Takuingoa. I'm a fourth-term councillor, 2 terms as Deputy Mayor, just not this term, and I'm on the panel because I was not part of the representation review group.
Kia ora tātou, David Langford, Chief Executive for the District Council.
Kia ora, David Wells, Chair of the Whanganui Rural Community Board.
Fantastic.
Kia ora, Rob Goldsbury. I'm General Counsel Lawyer at the Council here. I'm just here for be able to provide any technical advice if necessary.
Sure. Okay, thanks for those introductions. We're happy for you to provide a summary of the work you've done to date, and we'll see where we land from there. Then we'll go into those individuals that have sought the opportunity to speak.
Kia ora, thank you very much, Brendan. So I'll give a brief summary and then I think we'll pass to Anna because as lead democracy, she guided us through this process. So we did start way back. I think I've got my first note. No, thank you. October, yeah. So, and just for a brief introduction, October 23, we voted for the inclusion of Māori wards. That was a separate council process. And then in February, March, we started the process of looking at the representation review. And we had quite a number of meetings with us, a working party, which was made up of a certain selected councillors, and Whanganui Rural Community Board had a representation. Our legal counsel and quite a number of staff were also on that, and we worked through quite a number of issues. We had a terms of reference, and we did conducted surveys and slowly worked through the issues till we came to a body of findings. We did take a preliminary vote, like a straw poll, around those who were on that committee. And we made then presented through the chief executive, a paper was presented to councillors who were then able to vote on their preference, and so their preference was what ended up being considered and voted and passed. And obviously we did consultations, and I think we did hearings as well, and so there was quite a long process. It was quite a lot of work. So that sort of roughly sums it up. So Anna, I'll pass on to you to take the technical part of it.
Hello, I'll just, if you like, I can just give you a bit of an overview of the process, if that would be helpful. And then I think I'm happy just to answer any questions or the elected members. So essentially we had our Maori Ward decision in October 2023, and council voted in favour of establishing Māori wards. That then took us into our first step in the representation review process. To assist with that process, the council decided to establish a representation working party, and that was the responsibility of that party was to evaluate the council's current representation arrangement and undertake some preliminary engagement with the community. We also explored some viable options and then recommended an initial represent arrangement to the council for consideration. Following that, our preliminary engagement went on between February and April 2024, and it was a district-wide survey with the community. We also did a short survey targeting the rural community, and we did some community cordial sessions which were in person. The outcome of the district-wide community survey was that the majority of responses supported a reduction of councillor numbers and that they were elected on a district-wide basis. That information informed the initial representation options that were recommended to council. So from there, we had our first council decision, which was the initial proposal, where we presented 3 options. The options were 8 district-wide general ward councillors, 2 district-wide Māori ward councillors, and retaining the rural community board. That was the preferred option of the working party. However, the council decided to vote in support of option 2, which was a total of 12 councillors, so 10 district-wide councillors, 2 Māori ward councillors, and retaining the community board. The third option on the table was the creation of an urban and rural ward with no rural community board. However, that wasn't supported. From there, we went out and consulted on the initial representation arrangement, which was option 2. We ran a public consultation from 2nd of July to the 4th of August, and we received 190 submissions. 5 of those people opted to present their views at a submission hearing held before the Strategy and Policy Committee on Tuesday, the 13th of August. Following that meeting, the Strategy and Policy Committee then deliberated. The notion of reducing the total number of councillor positions to 10 was socialised again. However, the majority of the members supported the total number of councillor positions remaining at 12. So once we had that, we then the S&P committee for the Strategy and Policy Committee put a recommendation to council recommending that the Whanganui District Council comprised of a mayor elected at large, 10 councillors elected from the Whanganui General Ward, 2 elected from the Whanganui Māori Ward, and retaining a community board. And the community board were in support of retaining board. And then we had on the 3rd of September, the final representation arrangement was put to council, and they upheld the decision of the Strategy and Policy Committee. So again, 10 councillors, 2 elected and 2 elected from a Māori ward. And then following that decision, the democracy team did the public notification, and we went through the appeal period.
Oh, we can't hear you.
It's the dinosaur factor, sorry. Can you give us any, I think I've got 2, maybe 3 questions. You made an observation partway through your presentation where you said you did a short survey with rural. What do you mean by a short survey?
So partway through the working party thinking process, the notion of, and what we found from the preliminary engagement was there was a potential for a rural ward opposed to a rural community board. But what we hadn't actually asked our community about that, especially the rural community, so we did another survey out to them to socialise the idea before we put any options in the initial proposal.
Okay, thank you. And then when you resolved option 2 and you went back out to the public to publicly consult, can you help us to understand how that occurred?
So we publicly notified, and then we just had submissions. We had a survey. We had a survey again where they could let us know what aspects of the proposal that they liked.
Yes, and what was the format? How did people get to know? Was it on a?
We did Facebook advertising. We did did a radio ad, and we did we reached out to some of our community as well, and there was another community coordinator sessions as well. 3.
And
Meetings.
Sorry, I missed that.
In the newspaper.
Okay, thank you. And you'll notice that in the submissions there's some concerns around boundaries. Have you got any commentary you wish to make on that at this stage?
Essentially, the rationale for the boundary change was when the updated population numbers came through, it was one of the subdivisions was outside the ±10% rule. And to rectify that, Stephen Hill from Elections NZ and our GIS guy had a look at how they could move a boundary so that it was more even, an even spread. And they essentially moved a boundary that would affect the less amount of people. So it was 350 people were moved from the Kaiwi subdivision to the Whanganui subdivision. And we didn't believe that would affect the divided community in any way.
So just for clarity, Anna, that's just the rural community board. We've got 3 boards within the rural community board area, and it was the movement between those. This was not between the city boundary and the rural community board boundary. This was just a movement within it to balance the population to meet the rule within the wards, rural community board.
And is it reasonable to understand that it's your position that as a consequence of those changes, there's no negative impact in terms of representation or service or? I
thought there was no impact.
Yeah, okay. There would be no impact except for you've got 7 rural community board members. 7 rural community board members, So a small part of the population might have had these two representatives, and with the boundary change, it would move to these two representatives. And they're all just as active each other. They all still meet together. I can't see that there would be any change in service to those particular members.
And in terms of that deliberation, suffer us, because we just got to drill to make sure we understand. So in terms of that deliberation, how did you engage with the community board to come to that decision?
The community board was on the representation review committee. Yes. And so they had an equal say, obviously a strong say, in how we discussed the entire matter. And you were very comfortable with the distribution and the change of boundaries, correct?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment here. We were under the understanding that this 10% rule was quite important. I think the actual regional situation is more important. I don't think we should get too hung up on the 10%. Some of our recent engagement has made it very obvious that we are much better to concentrate on the various communities, keeping them together and having the boundaries around those communities, rather than getting pedantic over the number of people voting for each representative. So what I'm saying is, I don't think we should get hung up on 10%. I think we should just look at it from a community perspective.
So just have the communities been impacted negatively by this recommendation in your eyes?
No.
Okay, thank you. Got it. Okay, I'll just check with fellow commissioners. You're happy, both?
Yeah,
no question?
thank you.
Both happy? Okay.
I don't believe we needed to make that change.
Yeah.
But the change has had no negative impacts.
Okay, thanks for that clarity. I think that helps. Just bear with me for a minute while I'm working remotely with two bits of technology, so you'll have to just suffer me for a moment. I just need to check. Just bear with me.
Oh, actually, Mr. Chair, I do have a question, if I may.
Sure.
If I heard right, both times the proposals went out to the community indicated that they would prefer a reduction in numbers of councillors. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Okay. So can you just explain a bit of the rationale as to why?
No, we've got 158.
Excuse me, David, just a minute. Carry on.
Yes. Oh, sorry. As to why that perhaps wasn't picked up as an option to go back out to consult again the second time around?
Anna, we did consult when we went out for the full, so after the councillors, you speak to it, but I believe we went out for the final time and said, you could, did we go out for 12 and 10? Were they the options we went out for that last sort of consultation?
Josh, do you want to speak to this one? You've got
Yeah, so sorry, I just Josh Chandler Mackay here. I just want to clarify the question. So the question you're asking is why the option that we went out with for the formal consultation did not reflect the feedback in the initial survey. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you for fixing my question.
Okay, so what I can say is that after the result of the first community engagement survey that we did with the community, the working party, as a result of that engagement, proposed to the full council that the preferred option would be that we have 10 councillors in total, 8 from the general ward and then 2 from the Māori ward. When that proposal came through to the full council, the full council for a variety of reasons, including a concern about the retention of diversity around the table, the workload of councillors, and other various reasons, decided to instead go out to formal consultation, with the recommendation being 12 councillors in total.
So they went against the Working Party's recommendation.
That's right.
Yeah, is that, yeah, I guess that's what I was trying to make sure I understood. And what was the rationale for that happening? What was the discussion, if I may, around the council table as to why that recommendation was not taken forward?
Hi, Benita, Jenny here.
Kia ora, Jenny.
Kia ora. With regards to the initial discussion, because at the end result of that going out to the public, there was the 58% wanted to retain of the community wanted to retain the 12, which kind of endorsed the decision of us to go out for 12. But the arguments were around things like diversity. The smaller the number of people on the council, then that would reduce the level of diversity. And we used, for example, places like Tauranga and their lack of diversity as well. And they've got a much lower number. It may have a bigger population, lower number of councillors. We've had a history in the past of block or faction voting, and that hasn't served our community well. So again, smaller the number, the higher the probability that a faction or a block could get a stronghold and then do that block voting, which again doesn't serve a community well. There was that discussion around efficiency and effectiveness. There was discussion that from those who wanted 10 that it was more efficient to have 10, but there was no evidence from those of us who disagree with that it was going to be more effective for our community. Then there was the discussion of the breadth of workload, and you'll be aware yourself of how the workload for councillors over the last 10 years has just grown incrementally every year to quite an extraordinary amount. And again, the fewer councillors you have, then the more concentrated that workload would become. So they were the basis of most of the argument to go to 12.
It's probably worth noting too, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it was a split vote on that issue when we did go out. So there was a variety of opinion in the room at the time.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Just a couple more questions from me. Can you just help me? We're going back to the rural mesh blocks. Which way should they go? Have you made that call as to whether it's, what have I got here, into the Kaiwi or the Whanganui subdivision? Have you guys made that call yet?
Rob Goldsbury here. Hopefully I can answer the question. The decision that was made involved shifting, I think, a total of 350 people, that's not necessarily 350 voters, from the Kaiwi ward, a Kaiwi subdivision into the Whanganui subdivision. So the move was along the boundary between those two subdivisions and shifting some people from one side to the other. But it was all from Kaiwi, which had experienced the growth in numbers, into the Whanganui subdivision to balance up to get closer to the 10%.
Okay. I think my homework is done. Let me just double check. Right, I'm good. Any other questions from commissioners? It looks like we're okay. So going back, so to Deputy Mayor Helen, is that the full summation of your observations from your perspective?
Yes, I think so. You know, Yeah, we carefully considered the number of councillors, and that was well debated.
Yep.
And a lot of time put on that. The Maori Wards decision had already been made. The boundary decision, we had good representation from the technical side of that, and that was well discussed and decided. And then we thoroughly looked at that issue and went to the community on whether or not we should actually create a rural ward on council, as opposed to a rural community board. So I think we canvassed everything pretty thoroughly.
Okay, look, I'm comfortable, and thanks for those observations. I think we've managed to let you off the hook with no additional questions that you need to answer in the right of reply, because we've nailed them as we've gone along. So that's a pretty good position to be in for the moment. But once we hear from our submitters, there may be some other questions. So Emma, we're ahead of schedule, which I'm very keen to continue to pursue. Can you just check, is John available?
John should be popping through now.
And Commissioner, so we go to page 39. Kia ora, John, welcome. Just get you to turn the mute button. I don't know whether it's on or off these days.
How's that?
We're there. Perfect, perfect. Have you been watching so far?
I have, thank you. Yes.
Great, perfect. So you've seen the proceeding and seen how we go about our business. So welcome, and we're looking forward to your observations. We're in your hands.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners, and all other interested parties for this opportunity to express my point of view to you. To begin with, here is a dictionary definition of a review. It's a formal assessment of something with the intention of initiating change if necessary. My training was in the field of design, but for most of my working life, I've been involved in business, particularly at the sharp end, serving customers and managing staff. As to this particular review, all the boxes may have been ticked. There is no public outcry. You may well ask, what's all the fuss? And why am I here? I'm here because I believe the electorate deserves better. I fully appreciate the review came hard on the heels of a grueling consultation period, looking at the long-term plan, and that councillors and staff were understandably fatigued. I understand council is elected to make decisions on behalf of its constituents, but this matter is different in that it is about how those constituents are represented. The input from the public at large on this issue was absolutely minimal. But when no one turns up to a meeting to discuss representation, it is not just a matter of saying, oh, well, we tried. In my line of business, if what you're doing doesn't work, you try something else. I submitted to the hearing for the representation review and made a plea to councillors to 1, look wider, to 2, think deeper, and to 3, make bolder decisions. The Mayor responded by asking how council could make bold decisions to the effect that whatever decisions are made by council, the council is criticised. And my answer suggested that by following the steps 1, 2, 3, disseminating the critical information and making a case for each decision, that in the main, the general public would be carried along. Of course, whatever decision is made, it's never going to please every individual. I'm not aware of any personal gain I could attain from the confirmed outcome of the review, whatever it is. But it seems to me that in the deliberations by council, that most of the discussion centred on how the outcome would affect those sitting around the table, rather than the people they were supposed to be representing. As far as I'm aware, the task force or subcommittee set up to make recommendations to council comprised only of councillors, staff members, and a rural board member or two, I'm not sure. and no evidence or argument was presented for those recommendations. Nevertheless, certain resources went into gerrymandering boundaries to meet requirements for the rural wards to remain viable. The Whanganui Rural Community Board, I understand, has virtually no power to do anything and could well have outlived its usefulness. Anecdotally, we know over the years some councillors live, work, or have worked in the rural parts of the district and are able to bring rural concerns directly to council with full speaking and voting rights. As an aside, Whanganui rural interests have always been strongly represented on behalf of the district at Horizons. That's the regional council here. It would be interesting to see a cost-benefit analysis of the board's activities. The board was set up 35 years ago in 1989, and the district, along with the rest of the world, has changed dramatically since that time. Rural families and communities are not so isolated with improved roads, etc. Communication has dramatically improved with new technologies. Some people are choosing to live in the country for lifestyle reasons. There are not so many sheep and many more forestry trees. The shearers and loggers come from outside to do their work. Often traditional farmers nowadays have a partner or other family member who works in town. There is much more integration between town and country, and the boundary is blurred. Is it time to fully embrace the concept of us being one district and to solve our problems as effectively and as efficiently as possible? Regardless of that particular answer, improved quality of decision-making emphatically comes from better research and analysis. So far, the public has been insufficiently informed about the reasons for council reaching its conclusions. Admittedly, the question of the total number of councillors has been clouded by the uncertainty of whether Maori wards will actually be instituted. But again, there was no factual information provided on the reasons why one number should be chosen against another. The only significant idea was that no matter what the number, the overall cost was the same, i.e. fewer councillors would result in greater returns for those individuals left. Furthermore, in regard to the district-wide ward system, nothing was presented about the pros and cons, the success or otherwise, when it had been in place some years ago. Thank you very much.
Thanks for those observations, John. Just make a couple of, well, the first observation that I'd like to make in response is I hope that you've observed, we actually did question council in relation to how they consulted with the community. I hope you observed that earlier on, to the point that you were making about how as a community engaged with. It's probably reasonable to observe it's quite challenging, and we wanted to understand how the council had activated in that area. My question back to council for right of reply, it would be useful to clarify the task force membership. John made it pretty clear that he understood it was a unique group, maybe not broader than he had hoped. So if we could just understand a little more about the membership of the task force group, and also in right of reply, it might be useful to understand what are the powers that council allocate to the Rural Community Board. This is a public process that we are involved in at the moment, and individuals asked or made observations to the Commission. We can't answer them specifically, but via council, I think it's appropriate that those particular points that John's raised get answered publicly. Just check with fellow commissioners. Is there any questions or observations you have? Commissioner Bigham, and then we'll go to Commissioner Bull.
Kia ora. Thank you, John. Appreciate your time today. You talked about the lack of evidence that you saw for the changes that were made. What kind of I guess thresholds would you like to have seen for any change, or would you prefer no change at all? Where's your position on the changes?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, it's. I don't feel it's really up to me. I mean, I'm sort of quite a disinterested observer in some ways. It's the future of the world is not for me, but I would like to hope that there is a better future. And so, I've questioned the need for the Rural Community Board, for instance, and like I appreciate what it has meant in the past in terms of the amalgamation of the different counties and the city initially in 1989. But it's just we've moved on. It's a generation, more than a generation gone by. We've got to look ahead now. And the main thing about what I've been concerned about is that the evidence is provided, the reasons are given for whatever's being proposed. We can't make, the public can't make decisions just by ticking boxes on saying whether something's good or not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ball, we'll just get you to get that mute button pressed.
Thank you, John, and thank you for taking the time to come and speak to us today. You made a comment in your submission that these decisions had been made without the necessary information. Now, I know you've elaborated quite a lot on some of those things, but mine really follows on from Commissioner Bigham's question. What sort of information would you have found helpful?
Well, I think I sort of touched on some of that. Say the very last thing about wards. We had a system of district-wide wards, and so we've had the experience of it here, but there's been no analysis of what the success of that was compared with with the open just single at-large system. So there's been opportunities to sort of study what has been, what could be, bringing facts forward, hard evidence. There's been nothing, in this whole process. There's been nothing presented to the councillors or the public. The councillors were flummoxed really in trying to decide how many councillors they should have, because it was just personal opinion, and there was no substance to what really they were saying or were thinking about, because they didn't have any facts and figures.
Do you not think that the facts and figures that were gleaned from the public surveys shed some light on that kind of thing? Absolutely not, because the numbers are so small. It's overall saying 56% of the survey suggested this or that, when there's only 100 or 100 odd people, out of the whole district that have responded. It's just pathetically, it's just not right. So how do we engage the masses, John? Well, I have talked to staff about that, months ago, but, I've made suggestions about all of that, There are ways and means, and engaging with them is providing them with information for a start, and so that they can see there's an argument for one thing or another. There's sort of like a discussion groups that can be introduced. I mean, a wider sort of the task force, if that had a wider sort of membership, there could have been some real discussion with the community at large, instead of a closed. It was just like that was pretty much a closed book, door shut sort of arrangement, really. Okay, thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thanks, John. And hopefully in the writer reply, we get that clarity around the task force membership. Appreciate your effort, and thanks for your interest in the community.
Thank you.
Cheers, John. Emma, you'll organise our next submitted, Bill Simmons, and we're on page 30, Commissioners. Kia ora, Bill. Just get you to turn the mic on or the mute off, whichever language we use.
Tēnā koutou.
Kia ora, you've been watching the proceedings?
Yes, I've just watched John Anderson, yes.
Fantastic. Okay, so you'll appreciate we've got your submission, and commissioners are very keen to listen to your observations, and we'll check in with questions afterwards.
Thanks very much. I'll keep mine pretty informal and rather quick, I guess. Bill Simmons is my name. I live out here at Otamatea in a rural lifestyle zone. We're not part of the Whanganui city urban area, despite that often being seem to be the case. We have to often make the point that we're not part of the city. We're a separate rural area that is a rural lifestyle zone which runs right pretty much around the western side of the city. I've been here 37 years, and I have to say that over that 37 years it's been a real battle to maintain the rural character, scale, identity, integrity, and maintain our lifestyle activities as legitimate activities in a legitimate rural zone. We've suffered a lot of unwanted pressure from the likes of urban scale subdivisions, urban services coming at us, urban speed limits, non-compliance on boundaries with structures, things like this. And so it's really quite a busy interface, if you like, with the city that we live in here. And certainly the pressures here are much greater than the sort of pressures you get further away from the city because of the need for more land for development and the different expectations of people now moving into what were more rural areas than they've become. They've been somewhat improved. So in terms of representation, I think representation for rural people in our zone and all the rural zones around the district is really important because of the pressures that we are faced with and the different expectations that we have from those people that live in the city itself. And we certainly spend a lot of money in there. We look towards improving and maintaining our rural lifestyle, if you like, whether we're here for work or for the lifestyle. I'm now retired and I have no expectation of moving anywhere. So it's something that's, there's a constant need for it in terms of representation. Unfortunately, though, when we looked at the maps of the the rural wards and compared those with the zones that are identified within the Whanganui District Plan, they do not follow one another. In other words, one can live in a place like, for example, Mannington Road, which is another rural lifestyle area that's not far from here, and find yourself not in a rural ward, which is quite wrong in my view. At times we do need to have rural people who have skin in the game, if you like, within the rural zone, who can represent us and take issues to council where I have to say there's a dominance of city-centric views, if you like. So we do need to have that. We've recently had an urban service called curbside recycling foisted on us without any consultation whatsoever. We tried to get our rural community board member involved in that, and unfortunately that's been put on us without any consultation whatsoever. based on the fact that the original consultation 2 years ago or 3 years ago now, nearly, was actually for an urban area and the 3 outlying villages. So we aren't getting a good deal from the city in terms of representation. And I think the first step in getting that is going to be in aligning the boundaries of the wards with the actual boundaries of the rural zones, if you like. I understand that there's a lot of effort put towards having the right number of people or balancing the numbers of people in each ward, presumably to make the job of those representing us easier. I don't think that's so critical as it is to actually get the boundaries and the zones aligned together so that people have appropriate representation for their area. There's not too much else I really wanted to say, but I sort of agreed with some of John's comments, and I at the same time didn't agree with some of them. But I think John recognises too that there is a need for better representation for rural people, and I'm certainly for that. I've lived in rural in one form or another all my life, and I'll be here until they carry me off the block. So that's about all I've got to say at this stage.
I suppose that's one of the great challenges with democracy, isn't it? We can't all agree.
That's it.
But look, and another point I do need to make, thankfully from the Commissioner's perspective, curbside recycling is not within our purview. We're not going anywhere near that. That's for you guys to sort out. Because that can confuse things. So that's not something that the Commission will get involved in. In terms of legislation, the comment about plus or minus 10%, that is well within our responsibility. It's a piece of legislation that we're bound to adjudicate over, and that's all about fair representation right across the motu. So that is something that we're interested in. I do want to leave, though, a question that can come back in the writer reply, because it's come through pretty strongly, is around clarity on the maps. So I can't answer that. There's a proliferation of maps that we've got, and other than us making a site visit and driving up and down a number of these streets, I'm not in a position to make a definitive comment, but in the writer reply, it will be useful to understand whether council has concerns or observations, or maybe some plans in advance to maybe assist with clarity. So I'll just leave that part there for the moment and just check in with fellow commissioners for points of questioning. Commissioner Bull?
No, thank you.
You're all good? Okay.
I'm fine, thank you. Yes.
Commissioner Bigham?
Sorry, figuring out which button to push. Thank you, Bill. Kia ora. Thank you for your time today. You referred to basically the urbanisation that's going on around you and its impacts, or what we in the local government business like to call reverse sensitivity. So is that something that you yourself are noticing, or is it something that's coming from your neighbours and your community, your rider? It sounds like you're in a bit of a buffer zone.
Okay.
And how what sort of impacts are you seeing? And also, just second to that, just following up on Brendan's question for the council, I too would like to know around Bill's point about the maps not marrying up. Do the ward maps not align with the zone maps in the district plan? That would be really, really helpful. But yeah, Bill, what sort of things are you seeing, and how is that affecting what's going on in your community?
Okay, we're getting, I've been here 37 years, as I said. Around about 30 years ago, council took the brakes off the subdivision. When we came here, there was no subdivision allowed, and that changed in about mid-1990s. since then, we've seen all sorts of urban scale development pop up here and there all over the place. And it's certainly changed the character of the area. Far more traffic. We've had subdivisions here that instead of grazing animals now, these people own a large lawnmower. Their blocks aren't they don't meet the half hectare requirement for the zone at the moment, which is the minimum minimum lot size for any subdivision, residual lot size, if you like, for any subdivision. But there's so many sections have been previous to the 5,000 minimum area requirement. There's been so many places set up with between 1,200 square metres and 2,500 square metres. Our little quiet cul-de-sac that I live in has gone from having 9 properties along it, and I was right at the very end, to having 20 now through subdivision. Lot sizes. The people that are moving here are people from town who have money to build a large new house and use a lawnmower to cut the grass around them rather than animals. So they're not rural people to start with. So there's all kinds of pressures on us. I really don't think your words were we're like a transitional area, or I think you said a sort of a in-between area.
Yeah,
buffer area. Yeah, I don't like to think of us as a buffer between anything. We're a separately identified, legitimate zone with particular set of plan rules under the district plan, objectives, policies, and issues that need to be addressed within the zone that affect us quite uniquely. So my comment about curbside recycling wasn't intended to get any traction on that area. But it was an example of the sort of thing that can change the makeup of an area when you've got bins on the street. Well, as it turns out now, 5 days a week here, because of all the different contractors involved and the curbside recycling as well. So it's changed in all sorts of other ways. We've recently had a very non-residential building put up on the corner of Pickwick Road and Great North Road, which took some sort of resource consent, obviously, to achieve that, but it's quite out of character with the area we live in. It's just the way it is going. I'm afraid.
So the way it's going, Bill, just further to that, how no, I'm just going down a rabbit hole with this line of questioning. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Commissioner Bigham. Okay, Bill, we've had a good hit at it. Thanks for those observations. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Emma? Seems like my ears have died. Those observations.
We heard you, Brendan.
Does that work?
Yep.
That's working?
Yep.
Okay, so thank you, Bill. We'll now go to our next submitter, which is Colin. And Emma, you'll bring Colin in for us on page 38. Kia ora, Colin. Can you hear us? Can Colin hear us? So bring your hands to present, Colin. Emma, what's happening?
It doesn't look like we can hear you, Colin. Down the bottom left of your screen, there should be an audio button. If you click the little up arrow, there should be options for microphone. Can you try speaking again for us? Doesn't seem like we can hear you yet. Might just try muting you and then unmuting you and see if that helps. We still can't hear you. Can you check if your computer is on mute? Don't want no sound coming through. I might call you, Colin, and then hold my phone up to the microphone on my computer and see if that will get some sound to come through. So I'll just give you a ring.
Hear me now. Okay. Sorry, a little bit of technical difficulty.
Colin, that's not working, mate.
Is that working? Is that working now?
Yep.
Okay, right. Thank you. A technical one. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you.
Colin, sorry, mate. I'm really sorry. Really sorry. I don't think anybody
Is
can.
it working now?
When you say, is it working now? That's the bit we can hear. After that, we lose it.
We're not having any luck.
Emma, you lead. Emma, you're the technical guru.
I might just hang up and we might go to the next speaker perhaps, and then I will work through these technical issues with you offline if that's okay.
That sounds like a very intelligent suggestion. It's my understanding of representations from the community board who do wish to speak. Is that correct?
Rural Community Board, and next on the agenda, Whanganui Rural Community Board, represented by David. Did you want to say anything at this point, David?
No, this isn't a reply. This is a
No.
This isn't the council's reply.
It would be about, I guess.
Well, I've already, the main point I wanted to make was I didn't think we needed to get a hang up on the 10%, the community issues, but I've already made that point.
Yes, you have. Yep.
One of the submissions mentions It's Barbara Gray, I think. But she's not presenting today, is she?
No.
So the written submission we've got from her says that the Rural Community Board's not getting sufficient speaking and voting rights, and so is unable to make she says unable to make a significant contribution on that basis. I'm not sure that is it relevant that I speak to that?
Yeah, give it a go. I mean, it's really important that we hear every perspective. My sense is commissioners have got a pretty good handle on where it's all sitting, but it is your opportunity to make observations. So we should allow that.
Well, I'm really basing what I'm saying on the basis of these submissions. And I thought that was the reason we were here. So I'm not sure. My view is that council are pretty good about letting the Rural Community Board speak and get involved with rural issues. So I don't entirely agree with Barbara's submission. I think the Rural Community Board has a sufficient relationship with council that's not really a problem. I'm interested in Bill's submission. And so my question is there a process for getting an area which is currently not able to vote for the Rural Community Board, changing that so that they would be in a Rural Community Board area? So I raised that. And the other comment I make, if we're going to go the other way and we're going to convert some areas that are now rural into urban, I think we should be very cautious about how we do that, and significant consultation should be involved. I'm of the view that people take their rural classification very seriously, and Bill's submission would support that. So those are the comments that I have noted. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. I'll just check with commissioners. Is there any points of clarity or questions?
No, thank
All
you.
right there. Yeah, Commissioner Bigham.
Kia ora. Is my mute off?
Yeah.
Come on, thank you. Kia ora, David, thank you. Can I just refer back to earlier when you commented earlier in the piece around, where am I? You noted that the plus or minus 10% issues seem to be elevated with significant importance, which you didn't think should take precedence over switching boundaries around. Does that mean that you would prefer things to remain as they are, regardless of the plus or minus 10% consideration that we have to take into account? But are you saying that is not what should be most important, and are you now suggesting that things stay the same?
No, I'm suggesting that if adhering to the 10% is going to involve splitting community interests, which I don't believe it has in this case, then I don't think it needs to happen. But we've had a situation recently where we held a community meeting a couple of weeks ago, which was extremely well supported, and it identified issues pertaining to that particular community, and it was extremely worthwhile. So that's why I think the boundaries should reflect communities. That should be the main reason. and if getting the 10% exactly right is going to alter that community aspect, then I don't think it should happen. But I don't think I haven't been aware of any issues with the change that we're implementing, or did we decide we have implemented it, or we're going to? Or I don't think that that has caused any issues.
So if you take the plus or minus 10% out of the equation, just ignore it, what would your recommendation be to us? To change or not to change?
Not change.
Thank you.
And in actual fact, changing Kaiwi, some of the Kaiwi people to Whanganui, I don't think that's necessary. The Whanganui ward is enormous and has a number of communities a long way from each other. Very difficult to represent. Enormous diversity. So thinking about it, I think if they're taken away from Kaiwi, I think they would have been better left for Kaiwi. The Whanganui ward is low on population for a very good reason. It's huge and a lot of it's remote.
So look, this is the guts of, I think, why we're having this particular engagement. The plus or minus 10% is a legislative direct guidance. It's not set in concrete. And if a community is split as a consequence of this, then we evaluate and make a decision. Benita, Commissioner Biggins asked a really, really, really important point, which I think we need to spend a bit more time on. So David, you're saying as chair of the Rural Community Board that as a consequence of council's deliberations where the plus or minus 10% has been considered,
but is it?
The end result is that communities, in your view, as I understand it, will be, I'll use the word split, or I'll use the word compromised. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not exactly clear which group of people have been moved. And
okay, so
the point I make is that the Whanganui, I suspect that those people would be best left in Kaiwi, because the Whanganui subdivision, as I pointed out, is massive and diverse, and I think Kaiwi would be best left without. But I've had no feedback from anybody suggesting that they're unhappy with that move. I don't really think anybody involved is actually is that upset about it. Would that be?
Okay, so what we need to do is we need to pass that through to write a reply to the council. I think to be fair, give us some clarity so that when the commissioners make our decision, we're making it with a very clear understanding about where council sits. Are you splitting a community as a consequence of this, or are you comfortable that the plus or minus 10% that you are factoring in is not seen as a negative? And I think we just need to leave it sitting there. David, you've as chair of the community board have spoken, and that's the right thing to do, but we now push it back to council for right of reply to give us that point of clarity. Right, now I've lost Emma off the screen. Oh, there she is. How are we going, Emma?
So we're going to try and get Colin to come through from his phone number. So we might not be able to see him, but we'll just see if that's come through. Linda, could you promote him to panelist, please?
Hello, Emma. Am I online?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now. Yes, thank you.
Perfect. You're coming through crystal clear, Colin. We're in your hands for your summary of your
Thank you.
observations.
Thank you very much. My apologies for the technology. I think it's at my end. So, okay.
No stress.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. A couple of points I'd like to observe from listening to previous speakers. I'm not related to John Anderson, and I think the other little comment that was made, you were talking about the numbers of 10 or something. Well, that was a non-binding referendum in 2019 regarding the vote was preference for 10 councillors rather than 12, and I think the votes were about 8,000 to about 5,000, but that's just a little bit of random information, sorry. I understand that you've read the various submissions made to Council, my presentation to the Council Committee, and my appeal to the Local Government Commission. So therefore, I won't repeat my detailed submission today, but just would like to say the following. Whanganui District Council's review decision is in direct breach of the binding referendum held during the 2019 election. That referendum was about whether Whanganui voters wanted representation by a ward system or at large. The referendum was binding for both the 2022 and 2025 elections. And referring to the referendum results, over 81% of the voters directed Council to retain the at-large system. And that, in my understanding, is all councillors are voted for by all the community as a whole. I believe Council's recent decision to introduce wards is contrary to the binding referendum, and in my opinion is undemocratic and illegal, but however the Council legal advice will probably clarify that. So I therefore request that Whanganui District Council be directed to remove the proposed wards and retain the at-large voting system for the 2025 local body council elections. I'd also like to point out that I believe it's not the only breach of the democratic or legislative requirements that Whanganui District Council have done in this matter. In allocating the numbers of seats for the proposed wards, Council has not followed the specific requirements, for example, the formula and instructions contained with the Local Electoral Act 2001. And this, to me, is obvious from the contents of the deliberation report voted on by Council during their Strategy and Policy Committee meeting on the 13th of August of this year. That's the end of my submission. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for those observations. Clearly, there's points of clarity that I'm sure will come through in the right of reply. I'll probably round this out in a minute. I'm just going to check in with commissioners first. Commissioner Bigham.
Kia ora, Colin. Thank you for your concerted effort to join us this afternoon. That's really important to hear your voice. So thank you again. Just some clarity for me. I was understanding that the binding part of the referendum in 2019 was only around first past the post versus single transferable vote. But the wards versus at-large voting was part of the non-binding referendum, as was the 10 or 12. Can you just double check that I'm right?
That's incorrect. I'm sorry, I believe you're incorrect. The binding referendum was the ward versus at-large referendum. The non-binding referendums, there were two. One was for the number of proposed councillors, whether 10 or 12. And the second non-binding referendum was whether to go to STTV or first past the post voting.
Okay, so can in the right of
Yep.
reply from council, can we just have that clarified? Because that's not
Yep.
how I understand
Yep.
that referendum was. So, but thank you for that, Colin. I appreciate that.
So, Colin, we will get.
Sorry.
Colin, we'll get that absolutely clarified via council's legal advice very shortly. I'm going to check, Commissioner. Any questions? Are you happy?
No, thank you.
You're happy? Okay.
I'm happy, yes.
And to Commissioner Biggins' observations, to you, Colin, thanks for suffering technology. It is important that we get the opportunity to hear from all submitters, and I really appreciate your involvement.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your patience with the technical problems.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Now, you might not believe it, but at exactly 3:50 on my original notes, we were going to take a break. So the timing's impeccable, everybody. Well done. I think the plan should be now that we give sufficient time for a writer's reply, and to be realistic, probably half an hour. Can you give me some sort of a sense from your end what you think might be appropriate, Deputy Mayor Helen? Where are you guys at?
I'm personally at 10 minutes. I've heard 20. Quick show of hands. Who wants 10 minutes around the table? Who wants 20 minutes?
I think we need to.
So they want 20 minutes, please.
Okay, so let's agree that we'll meet again. We'll reconvene at 10 minutes past 4.
Perfect.
Okay. Now, just to be aware, this is all live. So if you turn your screens off and turn your mute on, then the rest of the planet doesn't hear you talking about us. And we'll come back at 10 past 4.
Kia ora team, it won't let me restart my video because the host has disabled it. Does that sound right? Ha.
Here we go.
There we go. Kia ora.
What a travesty. Apologies. Right, we're all back on, and right of reply is in your hands, Deputy Mayor Helen and team. If you can hear me.
Hear you. Okay, we're live. Can you hear us? Perfect. Thank you. Do you want to re-ask us each question one at a time, or just want us to go through them?
You'll go through them because you've diligently noted them all, and the ones that you've missed will remind you.
Oh, you've got great faith in us, Brendan. I was hoping you were keeping the list. All right. So we'll start with no particular order. The terms of reference clearly stated who we would include in the committee, the roles, and I'm going to get Josh Chandelel Mackay, who's a councillor, to walk you through that and any other reasoning. Josh?
Thank you. Yes, so the membership of the Working Party consisted of both elected members and officers. The elected membership was myself. Helen, as Deputy Mayor, was also the chair of that Working Party, and we also had two other elected members as part of that as well. There were officers too, so the Chief Executive, the Democracy Services Manager, our in-house legal counsel. We had corporate support, we had policy officers, communication officers, we had a GIS lead, we had a representative from Election NZ, alongside the Rural Community Board as well. I think there were two Rural Community Board representatives. And speaking specifically to the question which was around the opportunities for the community to input into that process, we did do two engagement surveys with the community as part of the Working Party working up its recommendation. So there was an opportunity for the community to input into that early stage of the process.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Any other questions from you in terms of that reply?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Josh, you also wanted to talk to the item on the binding poll.
Yeah, so I'll talk to the binding poll as well. So the statement was that the poll on wards was binding. That's incorrect. The poll that was binding, there were three held in 2019 alongside the 2019 election. One was on the voting system, and the other two were on the numbers of councillors and whether we elected ward or at large. And the only one of those three that was binding was the voting system, and that's why we didn't consult on it as part of this representation review, because it was binding for the following two elections.
And that's fine. That's public clarity. That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll next talk about that 10% plus or minus on the rural community board's boundary in respect of the wards. So we wanted to comply, obviously, with the regulations. So we looked at the numbers of population in each of those wards, and made the boundary adjustment to even up the numbers. And so that was like a technical exercise. We considered, was that going to disadvantage any particular? You don't want a split right through the middle of a community, and it wouldn't. So technically, we did the right thing. In terms of, and nobody's complained, I would suggest that until they come to vote at the next election for the Rural Community Board member, they might not even realise that there's been a change of boundary. So I don't think anybody is at a disadvantage, except they might say, oh, I really wanted to vote for the person I've got to know in that area. Because when we hold a Rural Community Board meeting with the community, and I'm on the Rural Community Board and so is Councillor Fallon. We've got two councillors sit on the Rural Community Board. When we go out to a rural community, we don't say, show us your proof of address or you can't come in this meeting. Like, we're there to represent the community. We don't check which boundaries are in. But I reflected on this, and I think if I was a voter sitting in the rural community in a particular area and I'd got used to voting for Joe Bloggs, and then I found out that, oh, due to technicality, I'm now in a different ward, I might take objection to that. So I think whilst we've complied technically, it would be great if the Commission wanted to decide another way. I don't think it's critical to overall outcomes, but it's probably better for a community that it's overall that you stay, you know, being able to vote in your area that you've always used to be voting in, simply because you know, the representatives tend to stay for quite a while, and it's good to get to know who they are rather than swap around just to comply with some sort of legislation. That's my response to that one.
Thank you.
Right. The next item is the maps. This is the boundaries between really the urban and the rural. So we'll get Chief Executive David Langford. Do you want to start off and give a corridor on that one?
Yes, sure. So the question was around aligning the representation boundaries to the district planning boundaries. Following receipt of, I think it was Mr. Simmons' submission, we didn't analyse the effect of doing that. There are, I suppose, many different definitions of what's urban versus rural from the layperson's understanding of it, the definitions under our representation arrangements. From a service delivery point of view, if you're connected to our water reticulation networks, you could be considered urban if you're in a rural area. And the district planning boundaries are just a spatial planning mechanism, and we don't actually see them being relevant to the representation side of things, and saw them more as conflating two separate matters. Retrospectively, we have taken a look at what the impacts would have been had that analysis been done, and I'll hand over to Rob now, who'll just talk you through the implications of that adjustment were we to do it.
Thank you. So what we've done, our GIS people have done an analysis of what would happen if we were to align the rural boundary, if you like, with the district plan zoning boundaries. It's not entirely accurate down to the last person, because the boundaries go through the middle of some mesh blocks, so that itself creates a difficulty. But the effect would be quite substantial. There'd be potentially 2,820 people added to Fordell subdivision of the Rural Community Board, 4,120 added to the Kaiwi subdivision, and 80 people added to the Whanganui subdivision. If we were to create that, if we were to carry out that alignment.
And just by
and consequently, those whatever those totals are taken from the non-rural area.
And just by way of further explanation, part of the reason for not seeing a connection between the two is our district plan boundaries aren't static. We're a growing community, and we are processing private plan changes. We're continually driving a rolling wall of district plan reviews of different chapters of the plan. So that general residential zone and the various rural zones under the district plan, those lines are moving on a pretty regular basis. So even if we did align them, it would only be aligned for a particular point in time before one moved again.
David, just to help out from a community perspective, but you would update them on your website as those plan changes occur, wouldn't you?
Yes, the district plan's published publicly. It's on our website. We've got GIS maps. You can click on an individual property and it'll tell you which zone that property belongs to under the district plan.
Okay, thank you. Benita, can I just check, are you happy?
Yeah, I just the last comment around the plans not aligning, totally get that with the ever-evolving district plan. Is, from your perspective, do you think it's a common misconception that they would align, and so perhaps in hindsight council could make it clearer that that this has nothing to do with, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, that people might make an assumption that then has followed through to the kind of submission that we've seen today.
Yeah, look, and it's not the first time where we've had an issue confused, separate to the representation review, a matter that's got confused because somebody's been bringing the RMA land zoning into an inappropriate conversation. So yeah, providing further clarity so our community can understand better. We're happy to take that feedback on board and see if there's more we can do.
Yeah, like confusing. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, David. And thanks, Commissioner Bigham. Okay, going back to the next question.
So I think a question was raised around the role of John Anderson talked about the Rural Community Board role and the need for it continuing. There was much discussion actually during our representation review about that, and we actually took a straw poll, and I voted against keeping the Rural Community Board. I was a standout, which I don't know how that went down, but considering we've got a farm, that was probably interesting. But look, we had really robust discussions, and at the end of the day, the Rural Community Board, they do sit on every committee and council. They have a seat. They have speaking rights, not voting rights. They have regular committee meetings in which they can raise issues and ask for officer reports, and then can make recommendations through to various committees. They have a small budget of which they can allocate funding for certain projects. And two elected members, myself and Councillor Ross Fallon, are appointed onto the Rural Community Board to ensure that there is good alignment between and good communication.
With full voting rights.
With full, and of course, the two of us have full voting rights. And all workshops, and well, pretty much all workshops and annual plan reviews, etc., the Rural Community Board are involved with. And for example, we held, the Rural Community Board held a public meeting just the other week, and myself and the Mayor and Councillor Fallon actually turned up and will fully participate, and we can bring those issues back. So that's how the Rural Community Board work here. The only thing the public would see was, whether or not they get a voting paper for the Rural Community Board, but of course those same voters get to vote in the election at large. So they get to vote twice if you're in that rural zone, if you like. And when we hold a rural community meeting, we don't say, show us your passport about where you live. Anybody can go along. It's open, and you're not excluded, and there's no differential about the issues that you might want to raise. And we've had people from different zones come into a particular meeting, and there's no discrimination. So it's really just around the voting that affects if you can vote for a rural community board member or not.
Deputy Mayor Helen, you might want to just declare what is the budget that the community board has to allocate?
It's a huge $16,000 a year.
15.
$15,000.
To spend as they see fit, is that what you're saying?
Spend as they see fit.
Thank you.
So that's that issue. That's it. Yeah, I think that's it. I did have some other notes on my perceptions of the subjectivity or objectivity of why councillors, the information they were given to enable them to vote for the number of councillors or not. Those sort of comments that John Anderson was raising. I'll only respond if you have got specific questions on those, but I'm happy otherwise to make comment. It's up to you.
No, I don't. No, we don't need to go there, I don't think. I'm just going to check with my scribe to ensure that we have picked up all the questions. Yeah, we're all happy, team? Okay. Oh, well, that's a pass mark for getting all the questions recorded. Okay. So that brings us to the conclusion. So we've gone through that process in public where you've gone out to your community and engaged. As of right, individuals have the opportunity to appeal and they've gone through that process. We, the Commission, have heard publicly those observations, and you as council have had the opportunity to respond. So our Commission role now is we will deliberate and then we will make between the three of us our decision. That's a process that won't be resolved until into the new year now with the workload that we've got. But I just want to say to all of you, thank you very, very much for the participation, the respectful process that we've gone through. Hopefully everybody feels that they've had a fair go and been respectfully heard and questioned. And really the last act is for us to close with karakia and enjoy the rest of our day. So I just want to say thank you very, very much to you, Deputy Mayor Helen and team. It's been a good process, and we've managed to navigate the technology, which is always a challenge, but we've gotten there. So I just want to say again, thank you, and pass to Commissioner Bigham to respectfully close us out.
Ai, tēnā nō koe I te tia mana e Brendan. Kia koutou hoki ki te awa, ki te taha o te awa o Whanganui. Tēnā koutou te kauni hira ārohe o Whanganui. Nei rā no te mihi o tēnei rōpū o te Local Government Commission kia koe i te Deputy Mayor me tō tīma mō tēnei āhuatanga o tātou I tēnei wā. So thank you, huge thank you again to you all. Just down the road from my home, beside the beautiful Whanganui River, for all that you do for your communities and for the time that you've taken to be with us this afternoon to familiarise us a little bit more about your beautiful place in Aotearoa. So we'll just close with our Commission karakia. Unuhia, unuhia. Unuhia I te urutapanui, kia wātea, kia māma, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua I te arataka tū. Koiara e rongo whakairia ake ki runga, kia wātea, aira, kua wātea, hau, pai mārire. So just freeing us up to carry on the rest of our day. Be well, be safe.